Hello everyone, this will be the continuation of Field Trips Always End Terribly. This will be Chapter 7, My Little League, Friendship is Magic. Summary: Kirogiri thinks, the heroes meet, exams happen, and Kamino gets blown to sky high. Kirogiri was not entirely certain how he felt about Midoriya Izuku. After about 4 weeks, he could definitely say he was much more polite than Shigaraki Tomura, and certainly more well behaved. But a villain in the making? Up for debate. He had seen the boy's skills, of course, and saw what got Tomura so intrigued, but he seemed far too good to really think about villainy as a serious career. Still, that had perhaps saved them both from injury at the hands of Stain, now a frickin' guest of the bar, whether for a drink or to teach the rogue more knife skills. If he hadn't jumped in front of the knife, Tomura would be sporting yet another injury, which would decidedly make him irritable, something Kurogiri never looked forward to, as it meant dusted glasses and more. But on that note, it seemed Midoriya Izuku worked again. The gloves were on more often than not, Tomura delighting in being able to hold things again. He had never stopped scratching, for the most part, but he didn't look nearly as chapped. Even if Midoriya never became a villain, it was clear to see the positive influence he had on Tomura, and that was something Kurogiri could not fault him for. In fact, Kurogiri was perhaps the calmest he had ever been. Aside from occasionally sending the boy to sensei, something every resident of the bar has starting to dread, things were almost normal. It was nice. Even Stain was feeling the effect of the kidnapped hero students, if Kurogiri had to guess. One time he had mentioned his target, and the green boy was quick to defend that hero. Tomura even joined in, pointing out a better target, and Stain had actually listened, if the next day's news were anything to go by. Kurogiri was not sure how he felt about Midoriya Izuku, but he didn't think that was a bad thing. He was good for them. Aizawa rubbed his forehead as the rest of the heroes trickled in. When Uraraka and Todoroki had come to him, saying they had seen his student in Hosu, he had immediately called a meeting. This was the best lead they had gotten since the start of the investigation, aside from Night Eye reluctantly handing over the files on All for One. Those files were grim, to say the least. As the heroes gathered, he was quick to get to business. During an attack on Osu, 2 of my students, who happened to be on site, happened to see Midoriya Izuku. Joke sat up, more than attentive. Where? Was he okay? He was, Aizawa sighed, and he was still with the League. The students identify Shigaraki Tomura, Kurogiri, and Stain. Several people noticeably bristled, and Gang Orca sighed. So we have confirmation that Stain is with the League. Edgeshot huffed. It's not in his MO. He's been working alone for months, and now he just joins the League? The org with one vaguely successful attack to their name? Plus, Midnight, present for this meeting, muttered. He got native in the chaos and another pro last night. Maybe that's his angle. Let the League cause a distraction for his more ballsy targets, but throw us off enough that we don't know where he's going to strike next. Do we have any lead on his next target? If we can track him back to the League, we can arrest a dangerous serial killer, villain org, and rescue your boy in one fell swoop. The tiger growled, giving a pointed look to the haggard Aizawa. He merely sighed in response. From what we can tell, he's also making use of their warper. Certainly useful for a quick getaway if nothing else. God. He ran a hand through his hair. The exposés on the heroes that get released after their death are brutal and efficient. These aren't like his regular targets. These are putting his ideology out there. He's all about getting rid of the fake heroes that people are starting to talk about him in a positive light. Murder is still wrong, though, murmured Mendeley. Yes, murder is still wrong. My teams, Narai spoke up suddenly, have located a few locations that might be potential bases. We aren't certain, of course, and it is a fairly large list, but perhaps if we split it among ourselves, we would be better able to narrow it down. Aizawa had to restrain himself from leaping up and ripping the list from the long spindly finger, but he managed to hold himself back. Good idea. Mendeley spoke up with a sigh. The summer camp is in 2 weeks. The pussycats won't have time to look into any location, but we can familiarize ourselves with them on the map. Aizawa nodded. Final exams are this week. And didn't that hurt to think about? Midoriya had been missing for almost a whole term. But the UA team will be spending some time this week looking into locations. The assembled heroes nodded, taking their sections of the list and dispersing. They would get him back. They had to. Ochako looked at Yaomomo beside her, preparing to enter the city where Aizawa-sensei was waiting. You have a plan? The vice rep started. Oh, I can make flash bombs? Ochako smiled brightly. Right, I can continuously use my quirk and I can warn you when he's looking at us. And then once we flash him, I can make his boat light and then we run. Momo nodded hesitantly. You have gotten much faster since your internship. A rather unique application of your quirk. Thanks! They quieted down, Momo making a few flash bombs hidden inside dolls, and Ochako letting the flow of One for All overtake her limbs, making her feel like the effects of gravity on her had lessened, like she was on the moon or something. A few pink sparks flicked off of her, and she loved the feeling of power, which is why she noticed immediately when it was gone. She yelped, tripping as weight returned to her, and Momo whirled around facing their teacher and throwing. They both screwed their eyes shut, and Ochako felt the power return. It surged through her at 5%, and she topped Momo, making her lighter, before they both booked it, gunning for the entrance. She hoped they could pass and go to the summer camp. She needed all the training she could get if she was going to save Deku. Hitoshi was honestly kind of nervous. Yeah, he had wanted to be in the hero course and now he was at the summer camp with them, but he really felt out of place. He made 19 students, an odd number, and a prime number. Ugh. And he didn't want anyone to think he was trying to replace that Midoriya kid. He wasn't. After all, if anything, he was replacing that grape kid that had transferred out. He really felt for the Midoriya guy, in a way. Not the whole kidnapping part, but how everyone dismissed him when they realized he was quirkless. He had it better, of course, having a quirk in the first place, but seeing how quick his class was to defend the kid, saying quirkless didn't mean worthless, he had hope. He really wanted to meet this guy one day, because all signs pointed to him being really nice. Hopefully his time being kidnapped by villains wouldn't have changed that. When the trial of courage came and the woods lit on fire, his nerves were replaced with something else, and he swallowed past the lump in his throat. Everyone else had training, and he just had his quirk. As he eyed the lizard and buff woman villain who approached, he stilled his resolve. He had his quirk, after all. When Spinner got taken over by the purple kid's quirk, Magna immediately reported back to Dobby, squad leader. A brainwasher, he muttered. How interesting. Mister, if you see him, feel free to grab him too. Boss would like that. The showman chirped a confirmation, stating he had already found the targets and apprehended them both, and would be heading to Magna's location to see about a bonus objective before swinging back to the extraction point. On the call to retreat, Magna pulled Spinner towards herself. jarring him out in the middle of his sentence. Bakugo and ow! Thanks, big sis. She grinned. Objective gathered. Time to head home. She watched the purple boy pale, the pussycats behind him doing the same, and she tossed their teammate back to them. See you later. She caught the edge of the mother from the brainwasher. Bakugo and someone else? But that means they're captured. Her grin widened as they passed the magician. He tossed the 2 marble to them, just in case something happened, and darted back to grab the bonus target. Heroes far too slow to react to the master showman, and they met back up in the clearing. All members present. Mustard, Toga, Twice, Dobby, Mr. Compress, Spinner, and Magne. Kurogiri opened the portal for them, and they slipped away, leaving the forest burning behind them. Boss would be happy. Boss might have been happy, but Izuku really wasn't. He looked at the 3 students, unconscious and tied to chairs, one gagged, the one he didn't recognize. He had been in the sports festival, he thought, from his seat at the bar, and he didn't know what to say. Toga hung off of him, gushing about 2 girls she had seen and fought, Uraraka and Asui, his brain supplied based on the descriptions. And Dabi was looking at at Todoroki, with an unreadable expression. Spinner was in the corner of the room, staring suspiciously at the purple-haired kid, and the rest were just hanging out while Tomura congratulated them on a successful mission. He looked at Kachan, who was not on the list when Tomura told them they were going to try to kidnap another UA student, and wasn't that concerning. He was glad he had talked Tomura out of recruiting Muscular and Moonfish, knowing they were too bloodthirsty and crazy. Granted, he thought, looking at the rest of them, the people they had recruited were still villains, some with several murders to their name, Toga and Magnus specifically, so maybe there was no helping it, but no one looked injured, so that was something. Kachan woke up first, which was probably the worst case scenario if Izuku was being honest. Red eyes shot up and almost instinctively found green, and Izuku could only watch as he bristled. Deku? Conversation stilled, and Tomura talked to the boy. Ah, you're awake. Good. The blonde ignored the villain leader, continuing to spit at Deku. The hell? Are you just here? Did you really join the villains, you little shit? He flinched. No? Yeah? Then why do you get to walk around free? Oi, Tomura said, annoyed. Stop talking to him like that. He's my rogue, and you've already been a huge piece of shit to him. Finally, Bakugo looked at the leader. What would you know, handfuck? Tomura grinned wickedly. Oh, I know a lot about you, Kachan. See, Sensei showed me Izu's memories, so I know more than you want me to. Bakugo narrowed his eyes, but Todoroki and the other kid were waking up. Heterochromatic eyes blinked before focusing on him. Midoriya, he breathed out. You're all right. He nodded after a moment, shifting uncomfortably. Yeah, I'm okay. He was quiet, but the other teen still heard him, nodding in satisfaction. Tomura turned his attention to the new teen. Todoroki Shoto, son of the number 2 hero, and yet you don't use his side of your quirk. We have a theory as to why, but want to tell us anyway? Todoroki's gaze darkened at the mention of his father, and he glared at the floor. I will never use his fire. Stain nodded from the corner of the bar. He's nothing more than a fake, not worthy of the title of hero. Dabi folded his arms in apparent agreement with both of them. Tomura's grin widened. Perfect! Then how do you feel about taking him down? All 4 UA students in the bar jolted and looked at Tomura. Izuku less so than the others, already fairly used to this, but really? This was a recruitment pitch for Todoroki? Jewel-colored eyes narrowed. You're villains. Izuku flinched and he slid his eyes away, but not in time to miss Todoroki turn his gaze to him. Izuku, are you sure you're all right? It was Toga who answered, hanging off of him with a big grin. Yeah, Izuku is doing great. He's our rogue. Izuku pursed his lips and Bakugo snarled, Shitty Deku, they're still looking for you, and you didn't have the decency to tell them you'd fucking joined the villains? He trailed off. I was looking for you. He jolted in his seat, eyes wide, and he saw. Was that hurt in Kachan's eyes? Todoroki nodded solemnly. He gave this whole speech about you before the sports festival. Shut up, half and half. You did? Bakugo rolled his eyes. Guess you didn't hear it then. We missed the opening ceremony. People are looking for me? Domura narrowed his eyes, as if one petty speech is enough to take away years of abuse. Your side had your chance with him, and you wasted it by being shitty. Tomura? He immediately stopped his rant to look at Izuku. Yeah. Who? He pointed at the gagged boy. Who is that? Why is he here? Lilac eyes narrowed at the villain leader. He has a brainwashing quirk, Magnus spoke up. Thought you might like him. Izuku blinked in surprise. So cool, he murmured. Tomura grinned. Does seem pretty handy. I'm guessing it's voice activated. Seems like, Spinner grumbled. Tomura crouched down, peering up at the brainwasher. I'm betting society's really put you down for having a quirk like that, huh? The boy didn't answer, of course, being gagged, but he did roll his eyes and slouch in his chair. There was a knock at the door, and they all turned as one. Camino! Pizzala! Before they could react, the wall burst in, burying Spinner, Magnet, and Twice under the rubble. Mustard would have gotten caught if Stain hadn't dragged him out of the way. Izuku saw who it was and flinched away. All Might. I am here, he bellowed, heroes swarming in before the villains had time to react. Stain was the first one to recover, starting to grab Spinner out of the rubble, not able to reach Magni or Twice before he had to dart back, avoiding the small yellow foot hurtling for his face. Kirigiri, bring the Nomus! I can't! The Mistman seemed almost panicked. They aren't in the designated locations. Ha! Tiger scoffed. Looks like the second team did their job. I see the 4 students you captured. Where is Ragdoll? Izuku's blood ran cold. Ragdoll had been captured as well? Tomura sneered. Not here. Who knows, maybe you'll find her before it's too late. Edgeshot rushed forward, thinning himself out to pierce Kurogiri, who let out a choke before falling to the ground, unconscious. He managed to also knock out Dabi before they were all hacking up gray sludge. 3 prisoners included. They all looked rather panicked, and Izuku had time to see Nomu spilling out of thin air before the sludge consumed his vision. His mind flashed back to the slime villain from over a year ago at this point, and even once his vision cleared, he couldn't see anything, breath coming far too rapidly to be normal. He felt a 4-fingered touch on his back in a raspy and panicked voice trying to calm him down. He managed to suck in a few breaths as his vision cleared, and he gave Tomura a soft smile. Then he looked up. He didn't recognize where they were, but he did recognize how utterly destroyed it was. He also recognized Sensei standing amongst the rubble. Ah, Tomura, it was a good try. You did your best. Sensei. Izuku. Both boys flinched and the 4-fingered grip on his shoulder tightened a little. Yes. Come here, my boy. He reluctantly got to wobbly feet, stumbling forward until he was within arm's reach.
I never did give you a quirk, did I?
He stiffened. No, but it's fine, really.
Nonsense!
He could hear more than see the twisted grin, and he tried to edge away slowly, but it was too late. A hand on his head.
If you're going to be staying with Tomura, it only makes sense to make you the best rogue you can be.
He fell to the ground, gasping at the pain, and something tickled in his mind. But he was in far too much pain to do anything with it.
I just got that quirk, actually, but it won't have much need for it after this. Perhaps you'll find fun new uses for it.
He stumbled back, mind reeling, wanting to get as far away from this man as possible, when All Might touched down. All for one! Sensei chuckled.
All Might, you're getting slower. That was only 5 kilometers. It took you this long to get here? Did you choose a successor already?
Your crimes have gone unanswered for too long, All for one.
Hopefully you have, since you won't be leaving this battle alive.
That's my line.
Oh, a hero saying he will kill the villain. Not very heroic, if I do say so myself.
Sensei paused, turning to the scattered league.
Time for you to go, Tomura, to fight another day.
Tomura almost protested, but he just looked at Izuku and nodded. Black and red tendrils sprung up from Sensei into Kurogiri's still unconscious body, and the mist spread into a portal.
Go.
The League was more than happy to clear out, the conscious members picking up the ones who were not, but then there was an explosion and a shock of ice. Izuku spun his head to see Bakugo and Todoroki, and the purple guy had gotten out of their restraint and had taken up defensive positions around each other, daring the villains to make a move. There was a shout, and he turned back to see Uraraka, Ida, Kirishima, Tokoyami, and Kaminari, of all people, speeding towards them, made light by Uraraka's quirk. The other three wasted no time in grabbing onto people in the group, and Uraraka gave a cry of Deku! Holding out her hand, and on instinct, he reached up to take it. Izuku! He looked back to see Tomura looking distressed before Stain dragged him towards the portal, giving the green boy a nod. Tomura, he muttered, feeling lost, and then the stress of the past half hour caught up to him, and he passed out. And there we go. So this is the end of Chapter 7 of Field Trips Always and Terribly, written by Itslivybear on AO3. So Izuku is finally back with the heroes. We will see what happens to him next chapter. And the fallout of All for One versus All Might. So this will be fun to see. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next chapter.